You're nothing but a freeloader, Melissa. The words hit like shards of ice, freezing me in place at my parents' kitchen table. My mother's face, once so familiar and comforting, now twisted with a coldness I'd seen directed at others but never at me. Not until now. Not until I finally said no. I stared at my coffee cup, watching the dark liquid ripple with my trembling hands. 16 years of birthdays, holidays, and family dinners seemed to dissolve in that single moment. 16 years since that first betrayal on my 12th birthday, when I learned what it meant to be the responsible one, the good daughter, the eternal giver. Sometimes I wonder if things would have turned out differently if I had just kept saying yes. Yes, to the monthly support checks. Yes, to covering Alex's car payments. Yes, to watching my parents hand over our childhood home to my perpetually failing brother. But sitting there, in that familiar kitchen with its faded yellow walls and the constant drip of the leaky faucet Dad never fixed, I finally understood, saying yes had cost me everything except the courage to say no. Let me take you back to where it really began. Not to my childhood, though those wounds run deep, but to the moment 3 months ago when I first realized that being the responsible one wasn't a compliment, it was a life sentence. I was 28, working as a medical assistant at a busy clinic, living in a modest but clean apartment that I'd furnished piece by piece with my own money. Every month, without fail, I sent $1,700 to my parents. For groceries, Mom would say. For the house repairs, Dad would mumble. But we all knew where it really went, to Alex, my 24-year-old brother who had never held a job for more than 3 months. That particular Tuesday in October, I was reviewing patient charts when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen, along with a text that would crack open the fault lines in our family. Your father and I have decided to sign over the house to Alex. He needs a fresh start, and you're doing so well on your own. You understand, right, sweetie? The phone shook in my hand. The little red brick house on Cedar Street, where I'd spent countless hours helping Dad fix the porch steps, where Mom had taught me to tend her beloved daisy garden, where I dreamed of one day raising my own family, all of it was being handed to Alex. Alex, who had dropped out of community college. Alex, who had maxed out 3 credit cards. Alex, who still lived at home at 24 because the job market is tough right now, sis. I called Mom immediately, my voice trembling with an anger I'd suppressed for years. You're giving him the house? After everything I've done? After all the money I've sent? Oh, Melissa, she sighed, as if I were still 12 years old, throwing a tantrum over a ruined birthday party. You've always been the responsible one. You don't need our help. Alex does. That word, responsible, hit me like a slap. In that moment, I saw with crystal clarity what it really meant in my family. It meant I was the reliable one, the one they could take from, the endless ATM who would never run dry because family helps family. But let me tell you about being the responsible one. Let me tell you about my 12th birthday, the day I learned what that role really meant. It was supposed to be my first real party. Mom had finally agreed to let me invite friends from school, not just family. I'd spent weeks planning it, carefully writing out invitations, choosing the perfect cake flavor chocolate with raspberry filling, even saving my allowance to buy party favors myself. The morning of the party, everything seemed perfect. The decorations were up, the cake sat proudly on the kitchen counter, and my best friends were due to arrive in an hour. Then Alex, 8 years old and already well-versed in being the family prince, stormed in. It's not fair, he screamed, his face red with rage. Why does she get a big party? I want one too. Instead of explaining that his birthday was months away, that he'd had plenty of parties himself, Mom turned to me with that look, the one I'd come to know so well over the years. Melissa, honey, maybe we could let Alex help blow out the candles? You're older, you understand. I didn't understand. I didn't understand why my special day had to become about him. I didn't understand why being older meant always giving in. But I nodded, because that's what the responsible one does. The party was a disaster. Alex threw a tantrum when my friends wanted to play games he wasn't good at. He smashed his fist into my cake when he didn't win musical chairs. And through it all, Mom kept saying, Melissa, be understanding. He's your little brother. That day, something shifted in our family dynamic. A pattern was set that would play out for the next 16 years. Alex's needs first, Alex's feelings first, Alex's failures transformed into everyone else's responsibility to fix. I learned to be quiet. I learned to give. I learned that being responsible meant being invisible unless someone needed something from me. So when Mom's text about the house came, it wasn't really a surprise. It was just the culmination of a lifetime of lessons about my place in the family hierarchy. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the casual way they decided to give away my inheritance. Maybe it was the assumption that I would understand, accept, and continue sending money to support their decision. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because at 28, I'd finally learned that being responsible to others means nothing if you're not first responsible to yourself. 3 days after that text, I sat at my parents' kitchen table, watching my mother's face contort with rage as I calmly explained that the monthly checks would stop. That I wouldn't be contributing to Alex's fresh start. That for once, I was choosing myself. "You're nothing but a freeloader," she spat, and in that moment, I almost laughed at the absurdity. I, who had been paying my own way since 18, who had been supporting this household for years, was the freeloader. But I didn't laugh. Instead, I stood up, my chair scraping against the worn linoleum floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, like a full stop at the end of a very long sentence. "No, Mom," I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. "I'm not a freeloader. I'm just finally free." The first month after I stopped the payments was like watching a carefully constructed house of cards collapse in slow motion. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Mom, each one more desperate than the last. "The electricity bill is due. Alex needs gas money for job interviews. How could you do this to your family?" I read each message with a strange detachment, as if they were being sent to someone else. Someone who still believed that family meant unconditional sacrifice. Someone I used to be. The breaking point came during a Sunday dinner I hadn't planned to attend. Aunt Carol had called, her voice tight with concern. "You should come, Melissa. They're telling everyone at church that you've abandoned them. That you've turned your back on family. You need to hear what's really happening." I found myself parking outside the familiar red brick house, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Through the living room window, I could see Alex sprawled on the couch, playing video games on a new gaming system I hadn't known about. Funny how they couldn't afford basic bills but could manage that. Mom's face lit up when she opened the door, as if the past month hadn't happened. "Oh, sweetie. I knew you'd come back. We've been so worried." The dining room looked the same, Mom's collection of decorative plates still lined the walls, the ancient chandelier still hung slightly crooked. But something had changed. Maybe it was me. "How are you managing?" I asked, watching Mom serve reheated lasagna. "With the bills and everything?" "Oh, it's been horrible," she sighed dramatically. "We had to borrow money from the church. Your father's had to pick up extra shifts at his age. And Alex, poor thing, he's been so stressed." Alex snorted from his place at the table. "Sis, thanks for that. Do you know how embarrassing it is having to ask people for help?" I stared at him, truly stared at him for the first time in years. My little brother, now a grown man, still wearing the entitled expression of an 8-year-old who expected the world to bend to his will. "Actually, Alex, I don't know what that's like," I said quietly. "Because I've never had to ask for help. I've been too busy giving it." "Here we go again," Mom rolled her eyes. "Always playing the martyr. You know, Melissa, not everyone can be as perfect as you." "Perfect." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what you call working 60-hour weeks to send money home? Is that what you call skipping vacations, living in a tiny apartment, putting my life on hold to support Alex's fresh starts?" "We never asked you to do those things," Dad mumbled, speaking for the first time. "No," I agreed. "You just expected them. Because I'm the responsible one, right? The reliable one. The one who always says yes. And now you're the one who's letting your brother lose his home," Mom snapped. "Do you know he's had to list the house? The house your father and I gave him? He can't afford the property taxes without your help." I felt a surge of something, not guilt, not anymore, but a kind of sad clarity. The house you gave him. The house I grew up in too. The house I've been helping pay for while living in a one-bedroom apartment. Tell me, Mom, how is that fair? Life isn't fair, Melissa, she said, her voice sharp. Family takes care of family. No, I corrected her. In this family, I take care of everyone else. And you know what? I'm done. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex's fork clattered against his plate. Dad stared at his hands. Only Mom met my gaze, her eyes hard with a familiar mixture of disappointment and manipulation. So that's it? You're just going to watch your brother lose everything? Everything he was given, you mean? Everything he didn't work for? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Maybe it's time he learned what it's like to actually earn something. You ungrateful. Mom started, but I cut her off. Ungrateful? Let's talk about gratitude, Mom. When was the last time anyone in this family thanked me? When was the last time someone asked how I was doing, what I needed, what I wanted? We didn't realize you were keeping score, Alex muttered. No, you didn't realize I was a person with my own life, my own dreams, my own limits. I was just the family ATM. Well, guess what? The ATM is closed. I turned to leave, but Mom's next words stopped me cold. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. Family stands together, Melissa. If you can't understand that, maybe you're not really part of this family. I looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman who had taught me to tie my shoes, who had kissed my scraped knees, who had also taught me that love came with conditions and family meant sacrificing yourself until there was nothing left. You're right, Mom. Maybe I'm not part of this family anymore. And maybe that's the healthiest decision I've ever made. The next week, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was a stack of unpaid bills, utilities, credit card statements, car payments, along with a note in Mom's handwriting. Since you've decided to abandon your family, you should know exactly what you're doing to us. Alex is talking about moving in with some girl he met. Your father's health is suffering from the extra work. The church ladies are praying for your soul. Is this really what you want? I sat at my kitchen table, the bills spread out before me like a map of guilt trips and manipulation. In the past, this would have worked. I would have written a check, sent an apology, fallen back in line. Instead, I took out my phone and texted Aunt Carol, they're using the bills as emotional blackmail now. Her response came quickly, they'll try everything they know works. Stay strong. You're not responsible for their choices. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I calculated exactly how much money I'd sent home over the years. The total made me physically ill, $87,400. Enough for a down payment on a house. Enough to start a business. Enough to build a life. And what had it bought me? A family that saw me as nothing but a resource. A brother who never learned to stand on his own. Parents who confused love with control. The next day, I met with a realtor. I'd like to look at houses, I said. Something small, but mine. All mine. As I walked through potential homes, I felt something unfamiliar, hope. Not the desperate hope of earning my family's love, but the bright, clean hope of building something new. Something that belonged only to me. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. A week after my house hunting began, I was working a late shift at the clinic when Alex showed up unannounced. He looked worse than at dinner, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing the same hoodie he'd probably had on for days. We need to talk, he said, blocking the clinic's exit. I'm working, Alex. You're always working. Always too busy for family. His laugh was bitter, tinged with something darker. Mom's been crying for days, telling everyone how her daughter abandoned her. I felt the familiar twist of guilt in my stomach, but pushed it down. Did she also tell them how she gave away my inheritance? How she watched me work myself to exhaustion to support you? It's not my fault they helped me more, he exploded. You were always the perfect one, the smart one. You didn't need help. No, Alex. I needed help. I needed support. I needed parents who saw me as more than an ATM. But what I got was a family that took and took until I had nothing left to give. He stepped closer, his face twisted with anger. You think you're better than us, don't you? Living in your nice apartment, working your respectable job, while we're struggling just to keep the lights on. The lights that I paid for? The car that I financed? The credit cards that I helped pay off? I met his gaze steadily. When exactly were you planning to start taking responsibility for your own life? You don't understand. No, you don't understand, I cut him off, my voice rising. Do you know what I did with my first paycheck from this job? I bought Mom flowers and paid your phone bill. My second paycheck? Dad's medical copay and your car insurance. Every month for years, Alex. Where did your paychecks go? Oh wait, you'd have to actually keep a job to get one. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, remember? Isn't that what Mom always says? I moved to step around him, but he grabbed my arm. You can't just walk away from us. We're family. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Let go of me, Alex. Now. Something in my voice must have reached him because he released me instantly, stepping back as if burned. Melissa, please. I'm your little brother. Don't you remember how we used to be? Before all this money stuff? And I did remember. I remembered reading him bedtime stories when Mom was too tired. I remembered helping him with homework, defending him from bullies, being the proud big sister at his Little League games. But I also remembered every birthday party ruined, every achievement overshadowed, every dream deferred because Alex needs help. I remember everything, I said quietly. That's the problem. I remember too much to pretend this is normal anymore. This isn't love, Alex. It's exploitation. That night, I dreamed of my 12th birthday party again. But this time, when Mom told me to let Alex blow out my candles, I said no. When he threw his tantrum, I didn't comfort him. When they tried to make his feelings my responsibility, I walked away. I woke up crying, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of letting go, of finally understanding that I hadn't failed my family, they had failed me. The next morning, I received a group text from Mom to the entire extended family. Please pray for Melissa. The success has changed her. She's forgotten what family means. Her brother is about to lose his home because of her selfishness. Sometimes Satan works through pride. The responses flooded in with prayers and condemnations, all except Aunt Carol, who wrote, maybe we should pray for understanding instead of judgment. There are always two sides to every story. Mom removed her from the group chat immediately. That evening, old Mrs. Peterson from next door called. I saw Alex loading up a U-Haul today. Your parents were there, crying like it was a funeral. They're telling everyone you forced him to sell the house. Did they mention the unpaid taxes? I asked. The maxed out credit cards? The fact that they gave him my inheritance without even talking to me? No, she sighed. They just keep saying you abandoned your family when they needed you most. I thought about that word, abandoned. How many times had I been abandoned by them? Every achievement ignored, every need dismissed, every dream sacrificed on the altar of Alex's endless needs. I didn't abandon them, Mrs. Peterson. I just stopped letting them abandon me. That night, as I walked through another potential house, this one with a small garden and morning sun in the kitchen, I felt something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. Not guilt, not anger, but hope. Pure, unencumbered hope for a future that belonged only to me. The local newspaper's headline caught my eye as I was leaving work, Local Church Investigates Financial Misconduct. I wouldn't have given it a second glance, except for the familiar names mentioned in the article. My parents' church, where they'd been spreading stories about their ungrateful daughter, was conducting an internal audit of their charitable giving program. Aunt Carol called that evening. Have you seen the news? Her voice had an edge of satisfaction I'd never heard before. Turns out all those donations they collected for Alex's housing crisis weren't exactly going where they claimed. My mother, the master manipulator, had finally overplayed her hand. She'd told the congregation that Alex was about to be homeless because of his cruel sister's abandonment. What she hadn't mentioned was that he'd already sold the house, and the money had mysteriously disappeared. The church board wants receipts, Aunt Carol continued. They want to know exactly where the $12,000 in emergency assistance went. Your mother's been on the phone all day, trying to explain why there's a new gaming system in the house but no mortgage payments. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the manipulation, tired of being the family scapegoat. But something else was stirring beneath the exhaustion, a sense of justice finally being served. The next day, a familiar car pulled into my apartment complex. Dad, looking older than I'd ever seen him, knocked on my door. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice small. I stepped aside, watching as he took in my modest but well-kept apartment. The furniture I'd bought piece by piece. The artwork I'd chosen. The life I'd built without their help. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said, sitting heavily on my couch. "The church, they're asking questions. About the money, about Alex, about everything. And you're here because I need to know the truth, Melissa. How much did we take from you over the years?" I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder, my documentation of every check, every transfer, every financial demand they'd made. $87,400, I said, watching his face crumble. "That's not counting the inheritance you gave away without telling me." He took the folder with trembling hands. We didn't realize. You didn't want to realize, Dad. It was easier to let me be the responsible one. To let me fix everything while Alex broke it. He's in trouble, Melissa. Real trouble. Dad's voice cracked. The house money, he gambled it away. All of it. Your mother's been covering for him, telling everyone you drove him to it with your abandonment. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Of course she has. And let me guess, now you need my help to fix it. The church is threatening legal action. If they find out about the gambling, then Alex will finally face consequences for his actions. And so will you and Mom. Dad looked up, his eyes pleading. He's your brother. No, I said, my voice steady. He's your son. The one you chose. The one you sacrificed me for. And now you get to live with that choice. The next week was a symphony of karma. The church board launched a formal investigation. Alex's gambling debts came to light. Mom's manipulation of the congregation's generosity was exposed. Their carefully constructed facade of the perfect, generous family helping their struggling son crumbled. I watched it all from a distance, finally closing on my new house, a modest 3-bedroom with a garden in the back. The day I moved in, Aunt Carol helped me plant daisies, not in my mother's neat rows, but in wild, free clusters. "They're asking about you at church," she said as we worked. "The real story's getting out. About how much you gave, how they took advantage." The congregation's horrified. "Good," I said, patting soil around a particularly stubborn root. "Let them be horrified." The final blow came a month later. The church board's investigation concluded with a public statement condemning the misuse of charitable funds. My parents were asked to step down from their leadership positions. Alex was required to enter gambling addiction counseling and repay the misused donations. Mom tried one last time to reach me, leaving a voicemail that wavered between rage and desperation. "This is all your fault, Melissa. If you'd just kept helping, none of this would have happened. The church has turned against us. Your father's reputation is ruined. Alex might face charges. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I played the message for my therapist. Yes, I finally had one, and she helped me see it for what it was, the last gasp of a controlling parent losing her grip. "Your mother's right about one thing," my therapist said. "None of this would have happened if you'd kept enabling them. You should be proud. Your strength forced them to face reality." That night, I sat in my new garden, watching the sunset paint my daisies gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. I have to pay back $12,000 to the church. Thanks for ruining everything. I typed back a simple response, you're welcome. Consider it your first lesson in consequences. Then I blocked his number. The next day, I received an unexpected visit from Mrs. Peterson, my old neighbor. You should know, she said, settling into my porch swing, your mother's been telling a very different story lately. Not by choice, mind you. The truth has a way of coming out. What's she saying now? Nothing much. She can't. The church made her stop taking donations. Your fathers had to sell their car to start repaying what they took. And Alex. She shook her head. Well, let's just say he's learning what life costs when nobody's there to pay for it. I felt no joy in their downfall, but I felt something else, peace. The peace of knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply stepping aside and letting people face the consequences of their own actions. That evening, I hosted my first dinner party in my new home. Aunt Carol came, along with friends from work and my new neighbors. As we sat in my garden, eating and laughing under string lights, someone asked about my family. I have a family, I said, looking around at the faces of people who truly cared about me. Just not the one I was born into. Later, alone in my new house, I added up different numbers, the cost of my freedom, the price of self-respect, the value of finally saying no. It had cost me a family, but it had given me something more valuable, myself. 2 years had passed since I'd planted my first garden. The daisies now grew wild and free, spreading beyond their original borders, a perfect metaphor for my own growth. My life had expanded in ways I never imagined when I first broke free from my family's toxic grip. Aunt Carol's call that morning brought the latest family news, not that I needed it anymore, but each update confirmed I'd made the right choice. Your father's been fired for stealing from his security job, she said without preamble. And the prosecutor found out he was in on Alex's fraud scheme from the beginning. He's being charged too. I wasn't surprised. The man who'd stood silently by while Mom and Alex drained me dry, who'd played the passive victim in their schemes, had been actively participating in their fraud all along. He's facing 5 to 7 years, Aunt Carol continued. His diabetes is out of control since his insurance lapsed. No hospital will treat him without payment anymore. My own life had taken a dramatically different turn. I'd been promoted to Regional Director of Medical Services, my salary had tripled, and I was planning to open my own practice. My garden had become a neighborhood landmark, not for its pristine order like my mother's had been, but for its wild, joyful abundance. One cool autumn evening, I came home to find my father sitting on my porch steps. He looked ancient, shrunken, his clothes hanging loose on his frame. The proud man who'd once ruled our family through silent compliance was gone. Melissa, he croaked, struggling to stand. Please. I need your help. I stayed by my car, keeping my distance. Why are you here, Dad? I'm facing prison. My health. I can't go to prison like this. The doctors won't treat me without insurance. You work in healthcare. You must know someone. Must I? I kept my voice level. Like I must have kept sending money? Like I must have accepted you giving away my inheritance? Like I must have stayed quiet while you helped Alex steal and lie? I'm your father. No, I said calmly. You're a stranger who watched his wife destroy his daughter, then helped his son commit fraud. My father would have protected me. My father would have stood up for me. My father would have been a man. He slumped, age and defeat etching deeper lines in his face. I never meant. You never meant anything, Dad. That was always your problem. You just stood by and let things happen. Well, now you get to stand by and watch your own consequences happen. After he left, I didn't cry. Instead, I went to my garden and planted new bulbs for spring, bright, bold flowers that would bloom while he sat in his prison cell. A month later, it was done. Father, 5 years in state prison. Alex, 7 years. Mom, exiled to a second cousin's spare room in another state, all her friends finally seeing through her lies. Their perfect little world had crumbled completely. Meanwhile, I hosted a housewarming party at my new lake house, bought with cash from my savings. Friends, colleagues, and chosen family gathered to celebrate. Among them was a young nurse I'd been mentoring, herself escaping a toxic family. "Does it ever get easier?" she asked, as we watched the sunset over the lake. Walking away, I thought about my father in his prison cell, my mother in her exile, my brother learning that actions have consequences. "It gets better," I said. "Not because it gets easier, but because you get stronger." That night, a text came from an unknown number. "Mom, using someone else's phone again. Your father's being transferred to state prison tomorrow. His diabetes is worse. The prison medical care is basic. This is on your hands." I blocked the number and opened my laptop, finalizing plans for my private practice. The office would have a healing garden, I decided. Something wild and free, where broken things could learn to bloom again. My life was here now, in my blooming garden, in my successful career, in the family I'd chosen and the strength I'd found. I'd started a scholarship fund for medical assistants escaping toxic families, naming it the Freedom to Bloom Fund. One morning, I found my first gray hair. Instead of plucking it, I smiled at my reflection. I'd earned every silver strand, every laugh line, every moment of peace. I was no longer the ATM, the scapegoat, the responsible one. I was simply me, successful, strong, and finally, irrevocably free. Looking out at my thriving garden, I remembered something my therapist had said: some people water dead plants forever, hoping they'll come back to life. Others learn to plant new gardens. I had planted my new garden. And God, was it beautiful in bloom.